If you say, I'm just going to eat whatever I want, I'm going to put anything into my body, I'm not going to pay attention to what's in my body at all, I'm not even going to consider what's going in my mouth, and I'm going to eat as much sugar and as much carbs, hallelujah, for those foods. I love them all myself. I'm going to eat as many of those as I want. Hey, for a little while, it's all going to go fine for you, and I promise you, some of you know this later in life, it ain't going to go so well for you. What will it do? It will physically derail you because you've decided I'm going to live by my appetite. Here's step number 1 if you're taking notes. First thing you have to do is you have to fight your inner battle. You have to fight your inner battle. So in James chapter 4, verse 1, James starts off with a question. He says, so what is it that causes fights and quarrels among you? Now, James is not writing to people outside the church. Did you know that? He's not writing the letter to people who've never been in church. They don't know about the love of Jesus. They've never read the Bible. You know, he's writing to you and me. And he asks a very pastoral question. So I'm asking the pastoral question to you. What is it that causes fights and quarrels among you? Can I just talk to you as your pastor for a second? I am 100% for you. Where are the fights and quarrels in your world? Do you have adult children that you don't get along with? In-laws? Anybody? Married? You struggle? You fighting? You quarreling? You have fights at work? Where's the fights and quarrels? At school, when you go to school, is it fights and work? You're like, she said, he said, and then they said. Here's what James says. It goes on in verse 1. It says, don't they come from, interesting word, translated here in the NIV, desires that battle within you. I'm going to lift this out. I want to help you see this because this is about the battle you need to fight, you and me. The word there is hedone. It's where we get our word hedonist. It's translated passions, desires, sensuality. It's got a multitude of definitions. And actually, he's not writing what you think. When you hear the word hedonist, I don't know what you hear. He's not meaning necessarily what you mean. He's talking about, in that day, everyone read that word and they went, oh, this is that ancient principle. This is the principle that people live their lives by. What's a principle? A principle is an enduring reality that you build on. So a principle of health is that what you eat and how you move has an effect, right? There's a principle. He's not talking about an idea or a thought. He's talking about an enduring reality that you build on. And in the ancient world, the hedone was actually you could call it almost an anti-life principle. Ancient cultures were very concerned with the kind of person that you become. We're maybe not so much like that. We could learn something from ancient cultures. And the ancient world looked at this hedone and they said, this is a principle that would keep you from developing character. It's a destructive principle. It's a reality you could build your life on. It's just not going to go so well. And no amount of ideas or education or insight or knowledge, if you've given yourself over to these passions, desires, sensuality, you won't be able to overcome it. It will overcome you. They saw it as the seat of all of our evil impulses. And so there were all these schools of thought. There was the Epicureans, and the Epicureans in ancient Greece, they thought that life was about cultivating the right kinds of tastes. And then the Stoics, which is making a resurgence today. If any of you follow Ryan Holiday, he's written books about the Stoics and Stoic philosophy. It's kind of making a resurgence. And the idea of the Stoics would say is if you could just have the right mindset about all of your life, everything would go well for you. And then there actually was a group. They were the hedonists, and it was a philosophy. And they said, hey, we should eat, drink, and be merry because tomorrow that we die. And James is referencing this kind of philosophical discussion that everybody was aware of in his day. And he's underlining that this hedone, this hedonism, it's there. And in fact, what it's doing inside of you, if you think it's not there, you're deceiving yourself. He says what it does is it creates an internal war. In fact, the word there desires to have that battle within you. It's the word where we get our word strategy. Within you, and those desires are inside of your body. So it's like this. He's saying, if you live by the wrong principle, it will cause you to strategically flail. It'll derail your life, James is saying. And so let me make sure we're on the same page here. Hedone, one way to translate that is the sensual. Now, I don't mean by that the sexual. I mean all the appetites. Appetite for food, definitely the appetite for sex. the appetite to be affirmed. And James is saying, listen, if you live by, if that's what you govern your life with, what will happen is you will be derailed. Think about this with me for a second. If you say, I'm just going to eat whatever I want, I'm going to put anything into my body, I'm not going to pay attention to what's in my body at all, I'm not even going to consider what's going in my mouth, and I'm going to eat as much sugar and as much carbs, hallelujah for those foods, I love them all myself. I'm going to eat as many of those as I want. Hey, for a little while, it's all going to go fine for you. And I promise you, some of you know this later in life, it ain't going to go so well for you. What will it do? It will physically derail you because you've decided I'm going to live by my appetite. Some people want to feel close to people, and so they use sexuality as a way to feel close to people. And if you live by that and you say, well, I want to be close to people, and sexuality is the way I feel better about myself and I feel better about my life, and so you engage in using other people with sexuality, what's going to happen is it's going to derail you. If you live your whole life for affirmation, and you're just like an affirmation machine, and like every interaction is you're trying to figure out, how can I get this person to affirm and validate me? And it's like you're searching constantly for it, and you can never have enough of it. Over time, that will derail you. It's why the ancient Greeks said this is kind of the anti-principle of life. It is a principle. It's an enduring reality you can build your life on. It's just not going to be very helpful. Now, question for us as Americans, of those Epicureans, Stoics, the hedonists, which culture would you say we as Americans are most like? Well, we're a culture built on feeling good, aren't we? You and I are marketed to endlessly. I do think our phones are, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I do think our phones are listening to us because you've had that conversation and you're like, oh how did they know that I needed that medicine, pill, supplement? How did they know? Seminar, what? You're being marketed to. They know how to find what you feel and target what you feel. It was created by a set of PhD students in the 70s, but the pain scale, do you know what the pain scale is? I think we've got a picture for it on the screen. You go to the doctor and you go to the ER and you're in pain and they say, show us. Where does it hurt? 10. Drug companies have taken that, there's research on all of this, drug companies have taken that and used it to sell drugs to you. Did you know you get marketed to on drugs? They don't go to the doctor. You see that drug advertised so that you'll ask the doctor for it. They use this pain scale because we now believe that you should not be in any pain. Dr. Paul Brand wrote a book called The Gift of Pain. He was a physician. He was in India for a number of years. And so he worked with people in horrible poverty, great difficulty, disease that they didn't have medicines to do anything with. And what he discovered in India is that those people had a greater tolerance for pain than people that he met he was from the UK, in the UK and then in America. And he said, you know what, in the West, we don't really know how to suffer very well. We don't think we should have any pain. If I did a series on, a 10-week series on how suffering could be good for your character, I promise most everybody at week 2 would be like, I'm out. I'm like, I don't need that kind of negativity in my life. And James is trying to say, listen, if you live at your senses, your appetites, it will derail you. You desire, but you do not have, so you kill. See, here's how it derails your life, he says, verse 2. You desire, but you do not have, so you kill. It's a different word translated there. I know they're both translated desire in the NIV, but it's a different original word. And it literally references the emotions that I feel, and I want to have that feeling satiated. And he says, so you don't have that, so what you do is you commit violence. Think about it. Killing is violence. Let me give you an example. You're a teenager, and you're dating somebody, right? And there's somebody that you like better, or they like better, and because you like them better, or they like you better, you break someone's heart because you like someone better, and you dump that person, and you break their heart, and you become a person who derails relationships. I'm using a teenage example, but I think you can get the picture, right? Then he says, here's how it derails your life. You covet, but you cannot get what you want, so you quarrel, and you fight. This is a reference to the 10th commandment of the 10 commandments, do not covet. Covet is this word that literally means like a sideways glance. You're living your life, you're going this way, I'm living my life, and I'm going this way. And I look over at how you are living your life going that way, and I say, that's better than the life that I have. And you end up wanting someone else's life. Can we just be honest for a second? I have spent time coveting. Have you ever done that? You know how discouraging it is to covet? Like, I wish my life was like this. I wish I had that. I wish that this was happening in my life, and it's not. Why does it always happen for them, but it doesn't happen for me? And what it does is it derails contentment and satisfaction. And then he goes on in verse 2 and 3, and he says, you don't have because you don't ask God. I mean, if you could, you would go ask God. He says, but when you ask, you do not receive because you ask with wrong motives. He says, what you do when you're living at the behest of all of your appetites is you take faith and you turn it into a mechanism to get what you want. And so you engage in, I would call it, sinful praying. And you make a profession about the difference that faith makes without letting faith make any actual difference in your life. It's just a tool you use. God, bless me with this. A number of years ago, Wilbur Rees wrote a little poem called I Would Like to Buy $3 Worth of God. Listen. I would like to buy $3 worth of God, please. Not enough to explode my soul or disturb my sleep, but just enough to equal a cup of warm milk or a snooze in the sunshine. I don't want enough of him to make me love someone of another ethnicity or pick beets with an immigrant. I want ecstasy, not transformation. I want the warmth of the womb, not a new birth. I want a pound of the eternal in a paper sack. I would like to buy $3 worth of God, please. Now, let me make sure you understand what James is not saying. He's not talking about a legitimate need that you and I have to feel safe, to feel loved, to feel like we have enough, to experience enjoyment. He's talking about a desire that you have that you can never satisfy. Here's how one commentator said it. Its starting point is your passions, and its goals are your passions, which simply give rise to new passions. It never reaches its goal and ends only in death. John D. Rockefeller was maybe the original billionaire in America back in the late 1800s, founded Standard Oil, Amoco. I know that's an outmoded company now, but it was huge. He literally had the wealth of 2% of all of America. No one touches him today, even Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. And fabulously wealthy man in the late 1800s. And someone went to him one time and they said, Mr. Rockefeller, how much money does a person need to be happy? Do you know what he said? Just a little bit more. So James says, listen, hey, and he calls us names. I'm like, thank you, James. He says, you adulterous people, don't you know that friendship with the world means enmity against God? He uses a very specific word. It's in the feminine. It's the adulteresses. If you know the history of the Old Testament, you go in the Old Testament, God's constantly saying, I'm the husband and you, my people, are my wife, and you're an unfaithful wife. And you keep moving your heart away from me and committing adultery against me. I was talking to a dear friend of mine who went through a very, very, very painful divorce. His wife had multiple affairs on him. And he said when he finally got to the end and got fed up with it and realized this behavior is not going to change and I've got to do something about it. He said at the very end he found out that she was having yet another affair, and he went and he bought a plane ticket back to this city where she was from, and he met her and he said, hey, you got a choice. You can either not go and meet this person ever again, and we're going to get a divorce because I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to do this to our kids. It's not fair. Or you can take this plane ticket and you can go and we'll get a divorce then and you can just leave. And she said, fine. Took the ticket. Got on the plane. He drove her to the airport. He said, do you want to say goodbye to our girls? She said, no. I don't want to see them. That's the picture James is painting. He says, when you give yourself over to appetites, what you have done is you've become adulterous. Don't you know that friendship with the world is enmity against God? This inner battle that we fight, hedone, it will derail relationships, it will derail contentment, it will derail faith. And you must, James is saying, you and I must fight the inner battle.